Well, hey there, church. We've been walking through this series, Love Where You Live, where we've been unpacking what it looks like to love those that God has placed in our lives. And we've been spending most of our time in 1 Corinthians 13, which scholars call the love chapter. And we've been looking at all these descriptors of love. Now, I want to start our time out together today imagining what our lives would look like without love. And interesting, Paul begins this love chapter by talking just about that. He says in verse 1, "If I could speak of all the languages of earth and of the angels, but I didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal." He said there would be nothing that's redeemable from knowing all these languages and communicating with all these people. He said if I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but I didn't love others, I would be nothing, he says. And if I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. There's nothing redeemable without love. You know, it reminds me years ago, Harvard did a study where they followed 268 men over 80 years. And they tracked them through their whole lives, their careers, wealth accumulation, home renovations, vacations, trophies they won, achievements they earned, you name it. And what they discovered was at the end of it all, none of that stuff really mattered. What mattered most was relationships. They came to the conclusion that embracing the ones that we love literally helps us to live longer and happier lives. So there's a joy that I have every week being with you, and I hope you feel the same. I mean, at Fellowship, we hear it often. I don't go to church because I have to go to church. I go to church because I want to. And there's just something about being together. And as wonderful as that is, the thing about relationships is that they all need tending. All of our relationships could use a little bit of work, and yours and mine are no exception. And this is really important. It's important work that we do. Some of the most important work that we'll ever do. So in 1 Corinthians 13:7, when we're learning about love, Paul even says that love literally bears all things. In other words, there's a weight to our relationships. In other words, relationships are not easy. When I think of weight to something, I think of running in that Tough Mudder years ago, which is this incredible race, and it involves all kinds of obstacles and such. And one of the things that I had to do was I had to literally carry a log on my shoulder up a ski slope a certain amount of time. And can I tell you one thing? It was one of the most exhausting things that I've ever done. Everything in my legs burned. I had a hard time breathing. It tested everything within me. Well, guess what? People are no different, right? As a matter of fact, what makes it so difficult is they're so different with all their idiosyncrasies and their anxieties, their quirkiness and uniqueness. Yet all those things that make each unique, they're the same things that we have in common because all of us, including you and I, we're all imperfect. So we're all deeply flawed people. Now, unfortunately, because of that imperfection, the imperfection that we have, we all struggle with things. We all have baggage. We all have things we wish we could undo, words that we wish we could take back. Yet with all this imperfection, we're still called to get along with each other. So in this holiday season, let's talk about loving and caring for each other. Even the weird ones, or the infuriating ones, or the ones who just drive us crazy. I want to share with you today what every family needs this holiday season, and I hope that you'll be able to take something away that you'll be able to apply right away to your family this holiday season. Well, I want you to also think about each one of these things as a gift you can offer your family. And so I want to share with you 3 gifts that your family needs. And the first one is the gift of forgiveness. Can I be honest with you? I need forgiveness every day. I need it from my family, from my church staff, from people on Route 9. I need it everywhere I go. I need forgiveness. And let's be honest, some things are easier to forgive than others. Maybe it's a missed call in a pickleball game, or a missed turn by an Uber driver, or a mobile ordered coffee that isn't ready. I mean, I wish life was just about mild slights, but we know better. It's not. Some of us, are carrying really heavy burdens. We've dealt with betrayal and wrongful termination. I mean, you name it. It weighs on us. It causes us to not trust people, to fantasize and think about living all by ourselves in our lives and not have another soul involved. Forgiveness is really the natural result of being in a relationship for a long time. It doesn't make you bad, it makes you normal. And forgiveness really is a choice that we make. And it's really, really difficult and hard because you never feel like it. You don't ever wait for these feelings to catch up in order to forgive. It really, truly is an act of faith on your part. But you must do it because no relationship you have will survive without it. It reminds me of what Colossians 3:13, Paul writes there. He says, make allowance for each other's faults. In other words, guys, we're all going to screw up. Forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. I think some of us, we can't remember the last time we went to bed angry, not because our relationships are so stellar, but because we don't sleep anymore due to that pent-up resentment and bitterness in our lives. That's the thing about unforgiveness. Unforgiveness gets into our bodies. It literally makes us sick. I mean, and forgiving can be hard, but it can also be the most liberating thing that you do in your life. I mean, think about it this way. We all enjoy a good Christmas wreath, don't we? Hanging on the door, it's so welcoming. Many of them are so creative and beautiful. But if you turn that wreath around and look at how it was made, it's quite a different story. Matter of fact, did you know that the word wrath and wreath come from the same root word? And if you look at the back of a wreath, you see that twisting of those branches, the clamping down of the branches. And it's really an incredible picture of what unforgiveness, bitterness, and resentment will do to your life. Wrath does this in your life. You become a prisoner to it. Bitterness will literally eat you alive. And we were never meant to carry such a weight. And it really is a weight. Here's what I want you to do to help you just kind of understand this a little bit. Take both of your hands and move them away from your body and clench those muscles really, really hard. Just squeeze really hard, arms and hands, and then release that, right? Now, imagine that you are carrying the burden of unforgiveness, and then you let that go. You feel the relief in your arms and in your hands. See, the payoff to forgiveness is peace. In the same paragraph, Paul writes, above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. So let it have, that first place in your hearts. For as members of one body, you're called to live in peace. I mean, isn't that what we all want? I mean, how many of us could use a little more peace in our lives, right? So even though you've been wronged, even though you've experienced loss and pain, you can let it go. And I could say by letting it go, you're not necessarily excusing it, but you are releasing it. So rather than just put this down, set it aside. And there may still be a need in your life for boundaries, but the pathway to peace is through forgiveness. And so it's no coincidence that the word give is in the word forgive. It really is a gift we offer others. And so start small if you have to. Forgive small things and then work from there. A second gift that we can give our families is acceptance. If your family's been around with each other for a long time, things start mounting up, don't they? It can turn an anthill into a mountain. People can just drive you crazy. Every person in the family has to learn to let some things go. I mean, here's the deal. To be human is to be annoying. And if you pick on every little thing, it will just wear you out. It'll wear your relationships out. And let's be honest, we all have difficult people. We have people who are cranky, who are negative, who are draining, who are bossy. And I mean, we have them all. And here's the thing though, we can't forgive people for who they are. This is the confusing part, right? Those who forgive people for being who they are actually just get wound up even more. I mean, resentment is added to resentment, and we feel sorrier for ourselves when our feelings don't go away with that. We feel guiltier because we're like, I can't forgive this person. Yeah, because we're trying to forgive them for who they are, not for what they've done. And forgiveness that heals focuses on that. See, it reminds us that we're not God. We need this reminder daily. Only God can forgive wholesale of what's going on in someone's life. We forgive people for what they do. We accept people for who they are. So there's this deep connection between our capacity to forgive and our capacity to accept, because both of them are rooted deeply in love. And that's what we've been talking about over these last few weeks. And it was really, acceptance was the signature of Jesus. It was a signature of him to embrace people that other people would exclude. I mean, you don't forgive someone for being a leper. You don't forgive them for being a Samaritan. You accept them as to who they are. You know, Paul wrote in Romans 15, therefore accept each other, just as Christ has accepted you, so that God will be given glory. We need to embrace God's acceptance. Maybe you need to embrace his acceptance of you, even in your own weaknesses and flaws. You know, acceptance is really being glad the other person exists and that, you know, they are who they are. And you're not trying to change them all the time. So maybe this is something you can practice during the holidays. You know, one way you can do this is just saying, you know what, I'm so glad that you are who you are. And I want to get to know you better. And this might seem like a real stretch, but this is a hard thing to do. But this is what we're called to do. It's a great gift you can offer your family. Let some things go, right? Because honestly, you know, relationships are hard, and family is worth it. And then finally, another gift, and I'll just end with this. A third gift that you can give your family is just these words of affirmation. You know, there isn't a person alive who doesn't need large doses of affirmation and kind words. It's like oxygen to your soul. I think about even how this happened to me just a couple of weeks ago. I rented a van from Home Depot and stupidly creased the side of it while driving it into, you guessed it, a Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru. Now, I can go on and on as to how this drive-thru was in no way built to code, and it wasn't. But suffice it to say, I was so embarrassed walking into Home Depot to report what I had done. Now, to my surprise, the guys behind the counter were really kind. I thought for sure they were just going to give me the business. But there was not one word about bad driving. Matter of fact, there were lots of words of affirmation. You know, things like, hey, this could happen to anybody. Don't worry about this. It's an accident. That's why we have insurance. Don't worry about it one bit. You know, just remember, they just wanted to take the guilt off, and they wanted to just take that weight off of that moment right there. It's very kind of them. And guys, can I tell you, for me personally, that was a gift. Because, man, walking into that store, there was a weight on my shoulders. And these guys, as difficult as all this was for me, they lifted that weight off. So you might be thinking, well, Andy, you don't know who other people are in my family. And you're right, I don't. And you might even say, hey, there's nothing I can think of at all to affirm them of. I can't think of one thing. And I just want to tell you, I know it can be really tough. But, man, you'll have to be super creative. You know, maybe you just walk in the room and you see them and you can't think of one nice thing to say, but then you look down at their shoes and maybe you can just say, hey, nice shoes. Or you see the phone that they have in their hand and you say, hey, I like your phone. I mean, it could be something as simple as that, but just to say something kind to them. Why do we do this? Because everybody's important to God, no matter if they drive you crazy or not. David writes in Psalm 139, he says to us that we're all special creations of God. And part of being a Jesus follower is believing with all your heart that God created each one of us, that we're all created this way, that we all have souls and the capacity to relate to God. And even in our unique creation, though, let's face it, we're all damaged. We're damaged by sin. And many of us are goofy as heck. But beneath it, We're wonderfully made. Now, many of us really don't believe that we're beautiful, gifted, or smart. And we end up comparing ourselves to other people, and many times we feel less than. But can I just tell you that you are God's idea and that He made you according to His perfect plan? So we have to approach each person in our lives uniquely. I mean, we're all so different. Those of you who parent multiple kids, you understand and know this. God's workmanship is really marvelous. And Paul writes about it and goes so far as to say that we are a masterpiece of God's creation. But when I think of kind words, I think of what Paul wrote in Ephesians 4:31 and 32. He said this: get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander. Instead, he says, be kind to each other. So that might take some creativity, but I would challenge you to be kind to each other this holiday season. Pay attention to the promptings that God places in your heart. And ask yourself these questions. Who is it that I need to forgive this holiday season? Who is it that I need to accept just as they are? Where do I need to let some things go? And where can I become more loving and encouraging, even with my words? You know, I know some of you are so blessed. Your family's amazing, and it's something to look forward to with anticipation, gathering with them. But I also know that others of you, your family's really difficult. They're hard to deal with. And maybe you've even experienced loss, and you're going to notice it more in these weeks to come than you will have all year. Well, I want to say this to you. The church is known as a family. We like to call ourselves the Fellowship Family. And I would encourage you to let us be your family this holiday season as well. You belong here. Well, let me pray for you. Let me pray for all of you. Heavenly Father God, families are your idea, as imperfect as they are. And sometimes we wonder why. We don't understand it. But God, I pray that this holiday season, it'll be a new season for us. Maybe we'll see a small breakthrough and we'll recognize it's from you. Maybe a glimmer of hope, some laughter and love. Whatever, God, give us your eyes. Give us your mind. And most of all, give us your heart that's so filled with love, because three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love.